idea that the gap is sort of a doorway into something that lies beyond and between the thoughts. That little moment of pause between one breath and the other, between one thought and the next thought, that's a surprise, right? That there's actually, between one thought and the next thought, there's actually a gap, like a moment of pause. That little space is the doorway into the universal self.
Welcome to the Awakening Process 101 podcast. I'm here with Pernilla Burke, the writer and photographer and the founder of Awakening 101. And my name is Louise Severin, and I'm a yoga teacher and a Buddhist. In this podcast, we will discuss the topics including spirituality, emotional health and healing, and the meaning of awakening in a context of our modern lives. Pretty interesting. By sharing our own experience, our own process of awakening, what worked and what didn't, our goal is to spark insight and plant seeds for you on your awakening journey. And today's podcast, we will deepen in the awakening process of the gap, the space, the pause, whatever we would like to call it. But it is the gap, the space, the pause between and behind the thoughts. So this is really, sounds maybe spacey, and it is spacey, but we really would like to deepen the awareness of how we can meditate and be aware of that gap where you are behind or between the thoughts, and how that will actually improve you in the present moment. And so that's what we're going to rock today. What do you say, Pernilla?
It's also the idea that the gap is sort of a doorway into something that lies beyond and between the thoughts. So what I've experienced through my own meditation practice is that little moment of pause between one breath and the other, between one thought and the next thought, like that's a surprise, right? That there's actually, between one thought and the next thought, there's actually a gap, like a moment of pause, a gap, which in Sanskrit we call it the madhya. And Sally Kempton talked about this a lot, my teacher Sally Kempton. So that little space is the doorway into the universal self. And of course, it's really sort of hard to grasp, but I think that we, as human beings, we go, oh, that is, I have had that experience where sort of like you're standing on the beach, you look at the waves, and for a moment, there's not a thought. It's also like a little bit deeper than just being present, right? Like you're in the moment, but you have a moment where it's like, it's sort of, you like move behind this like layer of your mind chatter, which usually is there constantly, like from morning to night. You're going through, your mind is like, what am I going to do next? What's going to be for dinner? Blah, 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 blah. But then there's like a moment where we move in behind all that.
For me, I would say that it's almost a cosmic connection. Like that moment is it's a moment of where I can really feel that I'm a part of something much bigger. That
Exactly.
little instant of being
exactly
being the whole, whole. But I also would like to compare it a little bit about our breathing, because that's also what happens. Like when we breathe in, and unconsciously the body keeps the breath for a little while, nurturing up little cells and little corners, and then you release and you're letting go. And before you inhale again, you also have a little pause. So I think also that's why the breath can really help you to also align with this kind of awareness, or when you meditate on it.
So I would say, if we were to look at this, like this concept of the pause from sort of a like really basic view, if we try to really, because it's so kind of like hard to understand. I mean, unless, like for me, if I had heard this conversation 20 years ago, I'd be like, what are they talking about? I don't understand anything, right? But from the most simple way to explain this that we're talking about is by talking about the breath or talking about the thoughts. So the moment, and we're going to go into this next, we're going to do a meditation where we're going to practice to not make this happen. We're not trying to make this happen. We're mindful awareness on following the breath to where it ends on the exhale. And then bringing in the inhale, we're going to follow the breath all the way to the inside of the body. You're going to bring to awareness inside. And we can work on it down to the, like below, like inside of the chest bone. And there's going to be two mini points where the breath stops between the exhale and the inhale. So it's kind of like a Libra balancing thing, right? You have like inhale, pause.
But I also like to see it. Now I'm interrupting, sorry, but I also like to see it a little bit. You know, when you write a text or when you read a book, there is always space in between.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, and I think that, I mean, I have always understood this part, but for me, it has been extremely difficult to practice it when I need it. I have always understood that there is something behind the thoughts, there is something between the thoughts, like this with the inhale and exhale. But for me, it's been really hard to, you know, how do I plug it in when I really need it? Because that's when my mind is so cluttered, and my mind is, because it's also really to master your mind. And I think that this past weeks, my mind just has been hilarious. I mean, it's been so in the red alarm, you know, but really, you know, and even if I know all this, it's just like, oh, please, you know, it's really, really difficult to just plug it in. And because now I really need it now. So that's also something we need to talk about. That how do I go from the awareness of knowing what's good for me and I need it to really doing it, to really get the plug in. Mm-hmm. Because that little step can be so extremely difficult and extremely wide, even if it's not, because it's there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I think that the most important thing, Louise, is that when you are, which you are right now, because Louise is going through quite a difficult time in her life, when you're in the fight or flight, right, which is basically you're living in a cave and you're walking to the river to get water, and you know there's bears and wolves that can eat you on the way. That's what fight or flight is. So you're on alert, the adrenaline is pumping, you're not sleeping well, right? Then the body has a very hard time to access this. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like you can understand the concept of moving to the layer behind the thoughts and in between the thoughts. But when you're in the state of panic or your fight or flight, it's almost like you have to find like a physical way to do it. And you do that because you swim in the cold water. Mm. So that's the only, I think at this point, you have to almost move to a physical, not sitting with your mind, because it's so busy that it's almost unbearable, right? Mm. It's a physical way to push your whole state of being into the pause. So, I mean, right now, I would just sort of like say, you know, it's going to be really hard to do this. And if I go in the water and it's freezing, it's going to happen.
Yeah, then it's going to take me out of
the frequency of the mind, right? And also, what I experience is that anytime I want to access this point, and I want it from Pernilla says,
Then
I
it's a
want to
block.
get this right now. It's not going.
No.
It's only when I really have surrendered to the fact that it is what it is, and I'm going to be stressed and unhappy, and my mind is going to be busy. When I completely surrender to the fact that this is what's happening right now and I can't do anything about it, then I have that moment too where I go,
and I think
there's a pause.
Yeah, and I think in a very important thing here, because everything starts with the true acceptance of the present moment.
Yeah.
So every time we try to force, now I have and have had it for over 20 years, my spiritual practice. And so of course I know it's there and I can lean back in it and I know what I need to go through to change my karma, my human revolution, so to say. But I think that as you said, as soon as I start to strive for something, then it's blocking.
Striving gets in the way of the spiritual practice.
Yeah.
So, okay, so the basic, and this is like the basic AA one of the best slogans that they have is acceptance is the answer to all our problems today. But yeah, it's so good. But of course, when you're in it, when you're in a situation where also one of the biggest triggers for a human being is what they call it also in AA. Like if you look at the 4-step, it says financial insecurity. So and that's the same thing, we go back to the caveman, he's walking down to the water and, maybe the water isn't flowing today, so he's not going to get the water. So then he has the wolf and the bear and the fact that there might not be any water. So the whole system is on alert. And that's also so you're going through a time where there's so much insecurity about your basic foundation. You're going to be triggered and fearful, and this stuff is hard, and that's why it's difficult to talk about right now, but it's also kind of interesting to talk about in the fact that
I think it's a healing process to talk about it, but I also think that here's where the universe comes, here's where the trust and the faith comes in. Whatever you have, this is really, it's really the moment to deepen my faith, really. And to transform, and also to have that, as you say, completely surrender, completely accept, and also accept the pain, also accept what emotional pain it could be to be in it. And it's and it is the only way to transform it, to really be in it, knowing that this, even if it feels like the heart is going to bump out or explode, or it's a hard way of learning. But I think that I know that this is the process I need to go through to really get into my,
well, you have no choice.
I have no choice, definitely.
Yeah. You have the process that
I could, but this would be, this would be like for someone who's not in recovery or not having a spiritual practice or faith for me, my Buddhist would go out and using this, would say, okay, fuck this, but it
Give
will
me some pills and take away the pain.
Exactly. But it will come back to it, as if we are on this, and this is why this podcast is so great, because if you are on the awakening journey, you need to go through it. There is no spiritual bypass. It's going to come back to you.
Yeah. So,
but now it's tapping out a little bit from
one more thing before, and then we're going to meditate, because I think we can bring it back. But it's interesting. You said this thing about the pain that you're going through, and you have no choice but to go through it. And I think that's, I've gone through a lot of different times with pain and my sort of like newly found Pernilla spiritual self. Like usually what happens when something difficult happens is that I do stuff. I'm like active and I go to here and then I go there and then I feel a little and then I go there and I go. So, but this year was the time that this shifted because Battle Boots, my horse, died. And I know that for people who haven't had horses, they're like, oh my God, this woman's crazy. But he represented something that was like bigger than it's hard to explain, but he represented love, presence, everything. He was like a blanket of fuzzy for me for 17 years. So when he passed away, I realized that I couldn't run from the pain of that grief. I didn't want to. So at the beginning of this year, and you were talking about that thing with the heart that's like falling out of the chest. I mean, that's exactly how I felt. But the shift was this time that I was like, I want to feel this pain because he was so important to me. And it's almost like right now you turn to it, right? Unless it's overbearing and you can't function, because that happened to me too with Battle. It's like I couldn't even get out of bed or whatever. And it's again, like what's happening to you is like way more intense than losing a horse. But I'm just saying it's an explanation. Like, how do we turn towards the pain in this situation? And maybe that's our next podcast. Who knows?
Yeah, but who knows? But just to line up with the pause and the mind here, because I can be in that pain when my mind is not taking over. Because when the mind is on top of the pain, it goes on thinking of the memories and why, and and making false reality for me. It's actually building up something that it's not really true. It's my fantasy, it's my illusions, it's my, and and then I start believing in it. So it's really interesting what you're saying there, because when I can distract from the mind and just be in the pain in my body, then I can feel the transformation. I can feel the inner work. I can feel that this is the true path. But when the mind takes over and say, well, if you didn't do that, maybe you wouldn't have ended up this, and maybe you are selfish.
Oh God. Yeah, but that's the human condition. You're always going to doubt it.
So,
okay.
Let's get into just before the meditation. Before the meditation, I just want to wrap up. We're in the mind, the gap, the pause, the divine space between and beyond. We have talked a little bit why this is important. Have we? Do you feel that we have?
Maybe.
But just shortly, we can say. I mean, of course, it's important to if you on your awakening journey, this gap, as I said and you said, is really where we feel that we are connecting to something bigger than ourselves and the divine. So I think that's why this is important if you're on this journey. And then now we're going to come to the little bit of how, and Pernilla will take us through a guided meditation.
Okay, so close your eyes. I want you to feel the bottom of your thighs as they touch the chair or the floor or wherever you're sitting. Just focus on the bottom of your body, connecting with what's beneath. The purpose of this is to ground ourselves, moving away from conversation into the present moment. You're going to slowly move from the bottom of your body and the bottom of your pelvis up to the stomach. Just notice your stomach coming in and out with your breath. And then you're going to move your awareness up to the middle of your chest or the heart chakra area, just in the middle of your chest bone, and also here, feeling how it expands and contracts with your breath. And already now, you notice that your mind has shifted. By putting your awareness inside of your physical body, you can slow down your mind, bring yourself into the present moment. Moving your awareness up to the back of your throat. Here we feel the air comes in and it's a little cold. Comes out and it's warmer. Then we're going to just move back to our favorite place, which is the nostrils and the air entering and exiting the nostrils. Here you ask yourself, where is my mind now? Bringing in awareness on your mind chatter, if it's slowed down, if it's gone. We begin here by inhaling deeply into the abdomen and noticing where sort of the breath, the inhale, where the inhale sort of stops inside the body. And we follow the exhale to see where it sort of ends up right in front of our nostrils. Inhale. Follow the breath to the end inside of the body. It could be the chest or the stomach. And then you exhale. Follow to where the exhale stops. The idea here is to, by having an awareness on your breath and the place where the inhale ends inside your body, or where the exhale ends right outside of your nose, your nostrils. The awareness will increase on that one moment where we switch from exhale to inhale, from inhale to exhale. And it is said that in that moment where we switch, that's where we can access the universal self, the Madhya. What you can do also is you can inhale and you hold for literally a second. Inhale, hold, exhale, hold, inhale, hold, exhale, hold. Try this for 3 breaths on your own. And as we come to the end of this, just ask yourself again, where are my thoughts now? Where is my mind? And become aware of the fact that they are just objects that you can move beyond. The true self is beyond your thoughts. Bringing your awareness back to the breath, back to yourself. Namaste. You can open your eyes.
Thank you, Pernilla.
How do we continue now?
I was just thinking that we need to say in the start of this podcast that people should not do this while driving, or if they ever listen to this, then they're gonna they need to stop the car.
I think that people are smart enough to know.
You never know.
I listen to a lot of Sally Kempton's teleconferences while I'm driving, because I feel like I can retain the intellectual information better while I'm driving. And she does meditations throughout her teleconferences. And I just go back to it later when I'm at home. But I listen through the instructions, and that sort of stays in my mind.
How was it for you?
So good. I mean, it's different when you're talking. But I think that when I did this the first time, this specific meditation, in 2006, I was at a retreat, and I've talked about that before, in Joshua Tree with Sally, and she did this. And it was the first meditation technique that I sort of understood. But I remember just trying so hard. I was like, she would say something like, you see if the field of your mind and try to like enter it like you're opening a door, and that's the gap, like at the end of your exhale. And I was like, oh, I gotta get in there, And of course, I think I might have gotten a seed of it, because otherwise I probably wouldn't have continued. But it took a while until the gap itself widened, like came. And that meditation practice is really, that's what it does. It's sort of like it's first, all you see is your mind, right? Your chatter throughout the day, like an EKG, right? Boop, 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 boop. And then you meditate And then all of a sudden, the EKG sort of like goes, boop, boop, boop. You know, you have a different beat in the mind chatter. It slows down from like 100 miles per hour to like 20. And then one day you discover that you're like flatlining, like it's zero. And it was difficult to get there. And of course it doesn't always happen, but when you have that opening.
Okay, wait, just 2 seconds because someone is screaming for here. Wait, freeze.
Okay.
Elton, jag sitter och arbetar, älskling. Jag är klar om en stund. Tack. Sorry.
So, yeah, I mean, just having the sort of it's like a background when you access this space. It's a backdrop to your life that feels very loving and embracing. But at the beginning, like I said, when I was trying to do it, it didn't work. But then I had moments in life where I wasn't trying, where, like, let's say in my 20s, I had one moment where I had that moment of pause or moment of the gap, the madhya, where I sort of like, you know, it was actually twice. So I had one moment in like an acting class at NYU where we did like a body scan. It was like 1992, and you know, it was a body scan. It had nothing to do with yoga because no one talked about that then. And it was a moment of pause when I was connected to my body, where I was like, "Oh, wow, this is cool," you know. And then I had the second one was one of my first yoga classes when I lay down in shavasana, and I had that just a moment where it was like a break in the thought stream, where it opened up to a feeling of, you know, peace and like a supporting energy, right? And that's what I was looking for. And I think it's important to talk about that. We don't always have to meditate to access this. I mean, I think that it's when you have when that flow state appears in your life, when you're doing something where it's like, it's a present moment feeling, but you're just there right now, that it's also an access point. So why don't we ask you, Louise, like I love this. So where do you think, like if you look back at the very beginning of your spiritual practice, like where do you think that you could have maybe accessed this pause?
I'm pretty sure that the first
moments where
I
you
think
look
the
back
first time was when we had our confirmation, when we were 15, and you know, we were supposed to go into church, and I remember the priest said, I was nervous, and she's like, you should just breathe in the divine space. And I will never forget that breath. Like it was really to breathe in what you would call in Christianity the Holy Spirit. And I got that really, you know, it was really, I like to compare it to also when I started to chant for the first time. It feels like it's cotton on the soul. It's like, you know, it's that divine space within that has no boundaries. And I think it's when I feel like I connect my microcosmos with the macrocosmos, you know, when those two things are aligned. But there was one thing that came up for me in this meditation when I teach. I always tell my student, it's where you have your focus that creates your experience. So if you have your focus on your body, on your breath, even on your mind, but that's what you put the energy into. So if you are outside planning the grocery shopping or whatever, well, then of course that would be your experience, even how much meditation, yoga, whatever you're doing. I think that for me, the breath work, like true breath work, is really an access to experience in a
so
very
true.
Like you don't have to have any spiritual practice at all. I mean, I have so many clients coming to me and say, and especially men in the 40s, saying, well, I'm not spiritual. I don't believe in anything. And so you don't have to be spiritual. You don't have to believe in anything at all. We're just going to work with your breath. You're going to work with your body. And they go out and it's like, oh my God, I didn't know I existed in this way.
Yeah.
And that's what we all have in common, like every living beings. And we have this access. And the best thing of all, it's for free. You don't even have to pay for it. You can just breathe. And the other thing I wanted to say was that now when you mentioned the Shavasana, it's oh my God, exactly. That's now Louise can't talk anymore. Shavasana, and I always call it the golden moment of your practice, because that it is the goal. It's the whole build up, and that's why everyone is coming back. Like even if you've been to a yoga class that's been horrible, or you're challenging yourself, or you didn't like the yoga teacher, whatever, but the moment you're in Shavasana, the body becomes relaxed, heavy, and the energy becomes, that's the yin and the yang. And you just get lifted, you get that moment before you fall to sleep.
I fell asleep every meditation for the first 10 years. And Sally was like, well, that's what you're going to do. That's what happens. I'm like, and now finally I don't anymore, but it's taken me a long time.
And it's okay.
But I just, it's okay. That's actually like if you read the Hindu scriptures, that's part of the beginning process is that you get so relaxed that you just fall asleep. And that's a layer of evolution that you go through. But I wanted to get back to this thing you said about you tell your students that it's where your awareness is. And I think that it's important to mention that for many, many years, I don't have a choice where my awareness is. So, because I remember so many yoga classes in the very beginning where I literally just I was so annoyed because the entire practice I was thinking about this guy that didn't call me back, or that I didn't have any money and I was a loser. And, that was my mind, right? So I couldn't switch that off. I couldn't switch it to the breath. I couldn't switch it to the body because I didn't have the tools yet to do that. But then, luckily, in yoga, there is Shavasana at the end. So, and it's like, it's almost like as if, I was thinking about this the other day, it's almost as if maybe in the beginning time of yoga, which was 25 years ago, I had 1 or 2 years of sobriety. I went for the Shavasana.
Oh, you did?
Really. Yeah, because it was like, I got it now. Because I couldn't choose where my awareness was.
But that's exactly what you're right, because the Shavasana is the moment for digest and embrace and really experience the effect of your practice. As you said, it's a learning process, and I think you're right there where you said you got the payoff in Shavasana. That's what that was the energy that took you back.
So I guess if we're gonna say to you at home and whoever's listening that I believe, even if we don't know it with our conscious mind, I believe that we are all trying to find this connection, this pause, that I think that most of us unconsciously knows is there. Like most of us, if you're listening to this, you know that we have a deeper self, like a soul self that we want to connect with. And that's the whole point of spiritual practice. And what are some things that, let's say, the person that's listening to this, but maybe you don't have a spiritual, like a meditation practice, like a traditional meditation practice. You don't go to yoga, but you've read books and what are some things that can also be, and we've covered this, but I was just thinking about, because we, at the beginning of the podcast, before we even started recording today, we were talking about that me and my daughter went to the beach yesterday here in New Jersey, and it's raining, but we go with the dog and he loves it. And there was a man in his really thick surfing suit out in the water surfing, and it was freezing, raining, huge waves. He was out there. And Louise said, I swear that's one of these. He's flowing with the forces of nature. So he doesn't have time to think about his grocery list out there. Mm-mm. He's not thinking about what his wife said
because
and
then
what's
he had
happening next.
lost
He's
it.
focusing on
The wave would have taken him.
So the flow, the accessing this flow in your life is number one, right? What are the things that I do where I feel the flow, where I sort of let go of my day-to-day microcosmic mind? And then I think that the second thing that is a tool is that this practice that we did, the meditation practice, like that's a great, you can do that for a minute, just following the breath. And like I actually did it in the way that I started. I only focused on the exhale because like focusing on the inside of my body was completely impossible at the beginning of this. So focusing on the exhale as it like ends up right outside your nose, or, on the exhale, and holding for like a split second. And that's a beginning practice of seeing that there is that moment of pause and thinking of it. Like Sally talks about this a lot in her meditations. Like you can think of it as a doorway. How do you go inside and through that moment? I mean, or even opening a door, like that's a door and I'm going into something, a universal space behind it all. And I think about this when I watch the birds fly or the geese at the barn that take off in the same group. I mean, they're connected to each other on a layer that's beyond their individual mind.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what they like. Yeah. So it's like that one last thing. It's like the same thing as like, you say that the individual soul is a drop in the ocean, and the ocean is the universe supporting us. Right. And the universal drop, the individual drop in the ocean isn't like I'm going this way. And the ocean's like, no, you're coming this way. Like, so that is, I love that, the sort of the fish in the bowl, drop in the ocean image for understanding what we're talking about here.
It's the essence of the Lotus Sutra.
Oh, cool. I love when we bridge that to Hinduism and Buddhism.
But I just need to say something about what you mentioned. I just went up to the Arctic and we had this meeting with a Sami person, and he had a herd for 3,000 reindeers. And the way he talked about his animals, it's exactly like the surfer is on the wave. There was nothing.
Yeah.
And also he said, it's not just me talking about my herd. He didn't say like, but also they are all together. The Finnish, the Norwegian, the Russian, and the Swedish, the Sami people.
Sami, yeah.
And they know each other herds.
Yeah. The Louise, what she's talking about right now is she just went up to the Arctic Circle in Norway, and she visited with the Sami people, which is basically the native Nordic people, and their whole lives are about herding reindeer, and it's just stepping into a different world, right? I mean, it's. I remember when we went to we did the same thing a few years ago. We went to the Kiruna, which is in the north of Sweden, and what I remember is that the Sami, we had a talk with the Sami there, and that's his whole life was to go from the Swedish side to the Norwegian side with his reindeer. That's his whole life. And the thing that was so incredible was he spoke so slowly, because most of the day he doesn't talk. So the speed of his mind and the speed of, and this is where we come back to the gap, right? He's living in it. He's living in it because he's connected to the nature of these animals. And even my kids who were, we went in 2000, so they were 7 and 9. Even them, they were like, wow, he's so, like they reacted to the fact that there was so much presence in that room just listening to him, because his presence, his complete stillness affected all of the people that were listening to him. Like no one's asking question or chatting or anything like that. We were just sitting there like mouths open, because he was so, his mind was tapped into the universal consciousness because of his life. You know, no phones.
It's amazing. And
living in a teepee.
This summer, he actually started to telling about the year of the reindeers. And the year of the reindeer doesn't start in January like for us. It starts in May. And now he's starting the whole, and it's starting by the shift of the Nordic light and the midnight sun. It was
giving
crazy.
Me goosebumps.
And then he also talked about the fact of how the eagles are coming to take the small babies when they get there, and how intelligent they are to get it. It was just so, as you said, and he spoke so slowly, and he was so present in every word he used. It was amazing.
Yeah, because you think they probably aren't thinking about what to say next.
Probably not.
Right?
I think a lot of people
we're always
do
thinking about
not really think what they should say next. They just say it.
Yeah, but that's on the other end, right? We're talking about people that just literally, the words come from their souls.
Yeah, very beautiful, very true. True. We should wrap up now. We can continue about it.
This is so deep, so I have to like go take a cold shower. But Louise, why don't you do it? One of your fabulous recaps.
Well, first of all, thank you for listening to us. We really hope that we have taken you on a journey together with us. And today's topic, the gap, the space in between and behind. We talked about how you can access it. Pernilla did a beautiful meditation. Please go back to it. Maybe you can put the time code where that meditation is so people can easily find it, because I would definitely use it. And I think maybe one word that we both want to give to the listener is we should not strive. We should just really try to surrender to it, and then everything will go.
Surrender to the opening of it. Yeah, and I also that we talked about various ways that this gap can be found. Life. We talk about this a lot because we don't want this to just be about like, here you have to meditate
Definitely
to do
not.
this. It's finding it in your life, even if you're not a meditator or a yoga practitioner.
I mean, you can even find that gap when you still and do dish-ups, like when you wash up your dishes. It's you're there.
Yeah, of course.
I think also that. I mean, we could talk for years about the gap, because I think you can also access the gap through your senses of really being in that.
So that's what we'll do next time. Thank you, Louise. You're so amazing.
Thank you. I love you so much. You're the best. And thank you for listening to us, everyone. Really, we're really grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.